So this is Lucille Ball. She is, pun intended, by the way. Lucille is a ball python, which is also called a royal python. Royal pythons are from West and Central Africa. You find them in grasslands and shrublands and open forest. They're non-venomous and they are constrictors. So they constrict their food. They do not inject venom into their food. They are completely harmless to humans. They never get above 5 feet is a very long royal ball python. They don't get very long. They are the smallest of the African pythons. And you can see ball pythons and any members of the Boidae family are really interesting because they have vestigial hind legs. And let's see if you can get a picture of that. These are also referred to as anal spurs. I'm not sure if you can see that. Can you see it? That little spur. Let me put on my reading glasses so I can see it. So these are the little anal spurs that are, see that? You see that one? Kind of got my fingernail under it. Mm-hmm. So these are the vestigial hind legs. And this basically is one of the ways that we know that snakes evolved from lizards. I don't know completely how old she is, maybe 1.5 years old, maybe a little older. I don't know how old she was when I got her. Ball pythons are the most popular snake as a pet just because they have such a docile temperament, and most of them don't bite at all, except they bite their prey, of course, but they don't bite people at all, most of them. But that being said, I don't recommend ball pythons as your first snake because they do take some expertise. You do need to know how to maintain the proper humidity, how to maintain the proper temperature, and that's sometimes easier said than done. So they're a little tricky to keep as pets. If the humidity is not high enough, they can get respiratory infections, they can have a hard time shedding, which can damage their eyes. If the humidity is too high, they can get scale rot, they can get other respiratory infections. It's actually kind of tricky to keep ball pythons. So even though they are the most popular snake pet in the world, or the US, the ball python, I think that's a bad idea. I think people should start with corn snakes. So let me tell you the difference between mammals and reptiles. We are mammals, and mammals are warm-blooded, which is also called endothermic, endo meaning inside, thermic meaning heat, so heat on the inside. In other words, mammals are capable of generating heat from inside their body. They can generate their own heat. Reptiles and amphibians are ectothermic, ecto meaning outside, thermic meaning temperature or heat. So they have to rely on the outside to determine what their body temperature is going to be. So if they need to be warm, they have to have a warm place so that they can basically, lie on top of it or lie out in it. Like maybe they'll lie on a sunbeam or they'll lie on something hot. They need to be able to warm themselves up with their environment. And likewise, they also have to be able to cool themselves down with their environment. So it's very important to keep the temperature just right for all of your snakes. They need to have certain warm temperatures and certain cool temperatures, and they need to have access to both of those in their tank. Oh, and people say reptiles are cold-blooded. That's not actually a term we like to use because that kind of implies that their blood is cold. And their blood is cold if they're in a cold environment, but their blood will be warm if they're in a warm environment. So a better term is ectothermic or poikilothermic. Those are much better terms than cold-blooded. Mammals have hair or fur, and reptiles do not. In fact, reptiles have scales. Really pretty animals. Reptile scales are dry. They're not slimy, they're not wet. I mean, of course, if I were to give her a bath, then her scales would be wet. But outside of the water, her scales will be dry. Mammals produce milk for their offspring, for the babies, and reptiles do not produce milk. That's why mammals are called mammals, because mammary glands to produce milk, whereas reptiles don't have mammary glands. I use her in educational programs, so I like to get her used to different types of touch. I like to make sure that she's used to people touching her head. When you first get snakes, they'll often be head shy. You have to basically work with them to get them comfortable with having their heads touched. I tried to hold her in different positions. I take her outside, I take her to other locations, and she's just a sweetie pie. She's a great snake. I use her in a lot of educational programs, and she is always well behaved. So yep, there's sweet Lucille. You can see she's got these little pits, these heat sensors around her mouth. Do you see these tongue flicks? So snakes, their best sense is their sense of smell. And in order to smell, they have to take their tongues and reach out and grab scent particles and pull them into an organ inside their mouth called the Jacobson organ. So you can see her tongue flicking. I'm preventing her from going in the direction she wants to go. But yep, that's her tongue flicking. She has very small teeth. A lot of times people think that if a snake like this were to bite you, it would leave, deep marks or tooth marks, and it might leave a few small puncture marks, but not very deep. Her teeth are really very small. She doesn't have fangs. She has no need to inject venom into anything, so she has no need for big fangs like venomous snakes. Her prey capturing tactic is just to grab the rodent, usually a small rat, and she just grabs the rodent with her mouth. And she does have small teeth that turn back a little bit so that she can hang on to the rat, and then she will wrap the rat's body up in her coils and constrict. That's the way she kills the rat, is through constriction.
What about defense against natural predators? Do they have natural predators?
Yeah, so mostly their defense is hiding and camouflage. And when that doesn't work, sometimes, so these are ball pythons. So ball pythons, when they get scared, they roll up into a ball and they put their head like at the bottom of that ball and curl around their head to protect their head. If necessary, you know, if the prey is still harassing them, or if the predator is still harassing them and won't leave them alone, and they need to protect themselves, they can bite. Ball pythons are known for pretty much almost never, ever, ever biting people, but they can.
I think that was good first.
She's a beautiful snake. So this is Feather, and Feather is a boa constrictor. And Feather is a BCI, which is a common boa constrictor. That stands for boa constrictor imperator. And Feather was born this summer, and sometimes I say she, but really Feather's a boy. But I keep messing up he and she, I guess because of the name Feather. But so Feather is in the Boidae family. Did I say that right? No. Feather is in the Boidae family, or Boidae family, whereas pythons are in the Phythonidae or Phythonidae family. So that's one difference between boas and pythons. Another difference is that pythons have more bones in their heads than boa constrictors do. You'll see that Feather's a little more, moves a little bit more than the ball python that we looked at. Boa constrictors generally tend to be more active than ball pythons, or at least common boa constrictors. They're really fun pets because they move quite a bit. They tend to be docile when they get older. When they're at this age, they still tend to be maybe a little bit bitey. So Feather can be a little bit bitey, but Feather's just a baby. So he has to learn, you know, what's food and what's prey and what's scary and what isn't. But he's learning fast. He's getting the hang of it, that's for sure. Boa constrictors are from South America, and common boa constrictors like Feather, they tend to be about 7 or 8 feet, but they can certainly get up to about 12 feet or more sometimes. They grow through their entire lives. They tend to live, they can live over 40 years in captivity. So you can have a nice big old boa if you take good care of it. Let's see. Everyone wants to know what the bites feel like. They just feel like little pinpricks. It's important, especially with something like boa constrictors, it's important to handle boa constrictors regularly so they get used to handling. Ball pythons just seem to be easy to handle whether you start at a young age or not. But boa constrictors, it is kind of important to handle them on a relatively regular basis if you want them to be friendly, fun pets to handle. Younger boa constrictors, like Feather, are semi-arboreal, which means that they like to spend some of their life on the ground and some of their life in trees. So when they're babies like this, it's important that they have things to climb. When boa constrictors get older, then they become more terrestrial. They're heavier, they tend to go up, they don't go up in trees as much when they get older. So boa constrictors in the wild eat birds and lizards and mammals. In captivity, Feather eats mice that are frozen thawed. I buy the mice frozen and then I thaw them out to the correct temperature and then give them to my snakes. Boas aren't that picky. Ball pythons are pretty picky about feeding. Their food needs to be an exact temperature, or they have to be at an exact temperature to eat. Boa constrictors eat very readily. They don't care if their food is live, if it's frozen thawed. They will eat when they're cold, they'll eat when they're warm. They're just good eaters. If something eats well, I say it eats like a boa constrictor. So like I said, this is a boa constrictor imperator. These are also called common boas, northern boas, Colombian boas. However, people often refer to these as red-tailed boas or Colombian red-tailed boas, and this is that's actually not what this snake is. You can see the tail looks red, or at least a darker brown than the body. So a lot of people say this is a Colombian red-tailed boa, but a Colombian red-tailed boa is a separate species. This is not a Colombian red-tail. Let's see. You find boa constrictors in South America. There are boa constrictors in the United States, but not these BCIs, not the common boa constrictor imperators. In the US, we have rosy boas. And I don't know, I can't think of any other boas in the US, but maybe there are others. But rosy boas are definitely found in the US. Feather can get 30 pounds or heavier. I've heard of boa constrictors getting 16 feet and 60 pounds, but I don't know about that. I've never seen one, but I've heard of it. But feather can definitely get to be quite large, quite long, and quite heavy. Not as long and heavy as a Burmese or a reticulated python, but quite large. Boas are nice heavy-bodied snakes that are really, really very fun to handle and very active and inquisitive. Boa actually means large serpent in Latin. Boa means large serpent. Let me just talk about some common myths among people. Sometimes people think that snakes are slimy or wet. They are not wet or slimy. They're actually dry. They're dry and a lot of them feel smooth, especially if they don't have keeled scales. They feel very smooth and soft. They actually are very, they feel good to touch and to hold. Another myth is that snakes will size you up. For example, feather here might be, let's say feather gets to be 10, 12 feet as an adult. Sometimes people say the boa constrictor or a python will lie down beside you to see what size you are, to see if they can eat you. And that's a myth. Snakes do not size people up to see if they can eat them. Snakes really have no interest in eating people. Once in a while, somebody gets eaten by a Burmese python or a reticulated python. Not very often, maybe about once a year, and never in the US. But for example, in Indonesia, a woman got eaten by, I can't remember if it was a Burmese python or a reticulated python, but she was working on a farm, and basically it had taken over the natural habitat for the snake. And so there's no prey for the snakes to eat, so they get desperate. And if they're big enough, if the snakes are big enough, there's certainly a possibility that if they can't find any other food, they occasionally, about once a year, worldwide, it happens that somebody gets eaten by a large constrictor, but never a boa constrictor. This snake will never get large enough to eat a person. So you don't need to be worried that your snake wants to eat you. Your snake does not want to eat you. Even a giant reticulated python or a giant Burmese python does not want to eat you. Not unless they're extremely hungry and there's no other food available. You can see here snakes don't have any eyelids. They sleep with their eyes open. They've got a scale that covers their eyes and protects it, and when they shed their skin, they will shed the scales over their eyes along with the rest of their skin. These are very active snakes, boa constrictors, so it's not like you're going to sit on the couch and watch a movie with your pet boa constrictor. Your boa constrictor, you'll need to be watching it and moving around because they're such active snakes. If you want a snake to watch a movie with, ball pythons are perfect for that. I call ball pythons movie snakes because you can just grab one and you can just grab a ball python and do whatever you want to do. You can wash dishes or watch a movie with the python on you and it'll just hang out. Boa constrictors, on the other hand, are very curious and they will always be moving around. And again, I'm doing a lot of head touching because I want my snakes to be comfortable in handling situations where someone might be touching their head. At a very young age, I like to start getting them used to being touched everywhere. That way, you know, if it happens in a handling situation, it doesn't spook them. So boa constrictors are fabulous pets. Since they get extremely large, they're expensive to keep. When they get big, they're expensive to feed, they're expensive to house because they need a very large cage when they get bigger. Feather will need a cage that's 8 feet long by maybe about 3 feet wide by 2 feet high. So that's not a small cage. So these are not good snakes for people with limited space. Feather will also need to eat large animals. Like when Feather gets big, Feather will eat large rabbits, small pigs, very large rats on a pretty regular basis. So those things are expensive and they're not that, you know, you have to find someone who can provide those. So it's not always, I don't recommend getting these snakes that can become very large unless you have the resources to deal with them. But Feather's just basically a newborn baby at this point, just a few months old. I also love how they have slit pupils. Pythons have round pupils, and corn snakes have round pupils. I love the slit pupils. Lots of times people say that snakes with slit pupils are venomous. Boa constrictors are not venomous, and they do have slit pupils. They also have a triangular shaped head, which a lot of people think of as, you know, a venomous snake thing, but boa constrictors are not venomous. They kill their prey by constriction.
Alright.
When I was younger, I had a 13-foot boa constrictor named Belladonna, and she was a sweetheart.
Good to go.
All right. So this is Strawberry milk snake, and she is a milk snake. Some animals have very bright colors to warn animals away from them. For example, poison dart frogs. I've got a couple poison dart frogs right in there, and they're very brightly colored to let animals know that they're poisonous. And then venomous animals also have warning coloration to let animals know that they're venomous. Now, milk snakes are interesting because this is a Sinaloan milk snake. Her natural habitat is Mexico, and she's a Sinaloan milk snake, and she is actually a mimic. She looks like a venomous coral snake, but she is not. She's not a coral snake, and she's not venomous. But she benefits from looking like an animal that is venomous. That's called Batesian mimicry. Some people say Batesian mimicry, and you can really say either. I say Batesian mimicry. So she is a Batesian mimic. And you see Batesian mimicry a lot in frogs, snakes, butterflies. There are three main organisms in Batesian mimicry. There's basically the model organism, which is venomous or poisonous. There's the mimic, which mimics the model animal, and then there's the predator, which preys on either the model and or the mimic. So that's Batesian mimicry. And there's strawberry milk snake. Now, I don't actually recommend milk snakes as pets. First of all, they eat other snakes, so I have to make sure that she never gets near my other snakes. Another reason I don't recommend milk snakes is because they tend to be difficult to handle. They don't really like to be handled. She's actually being a really good sport. But usually when you handle them, they just basically spend the whole time trying to get away from you. They just basically try dropping to the ground the entire time. Although she's proving me wrong. She's being fabulous. All right, that's Strawberry.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, this is a millipede, and his or her name is Vanilli. This is Millipede Vanilli. And millipedes are arthropods. They have segments and jointed legs. Millipedes actually have 2 pairs of legs per segment. Milli is a prefix that means 1,000th. And I know it sounds like 1/1,000,000th because it's milli, but it's actually 1,000th. And just like a millimeter is 1,000th of a meter. And millipedes get their name because it looks like they have 1,000 legs. Now, actually, this millipede probably only has about 400 legs. Millipedes have 2 pairs of legs for most of the segments on their body, and this millipede probably has about 100 segments. I haven't actually counted, but that's what I'm guessing. Centipedes, you can tell the difference between millipedes and centipedes because centipedes have 1 pair of legs per segment, and centi, the prefix centi, means 100th. And they get that name because people think that centipedes have 100 legs, but they don't. Centipedes have about 30-some legs usually. Millipedes are herbivores, while centipedes are carnivores. Millipedes do not bite or sting. They do, however, they have glands that release kind of an irritating chemical from their glands. And I think that's why my hands are orange after holding the millipede. I think that Vanilli has just been squirting some of that substance onto my hands. So I will want to wash my hands before I rub my eyes. Millipedes are invertebrates. They don't have a backbone. Snakes are vertebrates. They do have a backbone. Millipedes can be good in your compost pile. They will help break down organic material in your compost pile. So if you see a millipede, you might want to stick them in your compost. They sometimes do come into homes if it's wet and raining outside, but they don't cause any structural damage to homes or really any damage at all. So you don't need to worry if you see a millipede inside your home. Just take it out and put it in your compost pile. So that's a millipede. Centipedes have one pair of legs per segment, while millipedes have 2 pairs of legs per segment. And centipedes are carnivores. Millipedes are herbivores. Millipedes do not bite or sting. They're pretty much harmless, except they do secrete a substance from their glands, which can be mildly irritating. Actually, some millipedes can release quite a powerful substance, but this millipede here can't release anything that's very toxic. Just maybe mildly irritating. So I have a woolly bear caterpillar here. They're also called woolly worms. Sometimes they're called hedgehog caterpillars, because here's one curled up and you can see it's curled up and it kind of looks like a hedgehog all curled up. And they're kind of soft and a little bristly. And woolly bear caterpillars, there's this old folklore that says that you can predict the severity of a winter based on what a woolly bear caterpillar looks like. And if they have more black up at the beginning, like here, toward their face, that the beginning of winter will be cold. The more black they have on them, the more severe and cold the winter will be. And also the more brown they have on them, the milder the winter will be. So if we were to believe that, that's just a myth. But if we were to believe that, we would look at this woolly bear caterpillar and say that the beginning of the winter is going to be rough and cold. The rest of the winter will be mild. But again, that's just an old wives' tale. So these are insects, meaning they have 6 legs, and I don't know if we'll be able to see them. You want to show us your 6 legs? It's going to be a little hard. But they do have 6 legs. You'll just have to take my word on that. They're down there. They turn into Isabella tiger moths. Most caterpillars spend just a few weeks being a caterpillar, and then they become moths. Woolly bear caterpillars can spend about 14 years being a woolly bear caterpillar before they transform into a moth. This will eventually become an Isabella tiger moth. Woolly bear caterpillars can survive up to -90 degrees Fahrenheit, and they can even spend the entire winter in an ice cube and be fine in the spring. Their coloring actually is based on their age, what they've been eating, the species. Let's see. I don't know. That's about it.
Well, I mean, that's
That's it.
Let me get some shots of the actual critters.
Cool.
See if I can hold my fingers still.
Yeah. It's a pretty cool shot, actually.
All right. So we have corn snakes here, and I'd like to talk about corn snake coloration. So if you can see, the corn snake I'm holding has red and black colors, and there's some yellow. I'm just going to do the two predominant colors for corn snakes, which are red and black, because most corn snake morphs or different variations can be described or can be bred just focusing on the red and the black colors. So corn snakes have two different genes. Actually, they have more than two genes for color, but they have two main genes for color, red and black. And they have, so if you have two genes, you're going to have four alleles, two alleles for each of the genes. So depending on the combination of those alleles, you get the snake that the color snake that you're breeding for. So this is Kellogg corn snake. And Kellogg, you can see, has red and black. Kellogg's got this beautiful red color. You can see some black. If you look at Kellogg's stomach, you can see red and black, kind of, it looks like corn kernels. So you see all these beautiful red and black colors in Kellogg. Maisie, this is Maisie the corn snake. She has been bred without the black. So both of her alleles for the black gene in her DNA are mutant. They're mutant alleles. And she is not expressing the, did I say that right? Both of the black alleles are mutants and they do not express any black color. So we can compare them. You can look at Kellogg and Maisie together. And Maisie's just basically a corn snake with the black bred out of her. And if you look at Maisie's stomach, can you show Maisie's stomach? You can see that she does not have the black checks or the black corn kernel looking things on her that Kellogg does. Now, Maisie, we've had Maisie for over 20 years. And I'm not supposed to have a favorite snake. I'm supposed to love them all equally, but she's my favorite snake. Don't tell anyone, Maisie. So then you can see Jacob here is holding a corn snake that is missing the red. So can you show the tummy of your corn snake, Jacob? You can see the corn kernel looking checks. And let's hold all of our corn snakes up together so that they're all kind of intertwined. Here, let me take yours just temporarily, Jacob. Okay, let's just put them all together so you can see the red, the black, and the red and black. So the black ones are called anery corn snakes, really anerythristic corn snakes. The red corn snakes are called melanistic corn snakes. And this is just, what I have is just a normal corn snake that you would find. This is just a wild type. This is what you would see outside. And you want to hold them together again, you guys? Put them all together. Let's get all of those colors. Whoop.
Easy slipped off. I knew it was gonna happen.
Beautiful, huh? Go ahead and bring yours over, Jacob. All of these pretty colors. And then there are corn snakes that don't have the red or the black. And those are called snow corns. And those are almost pure white since they lack the red and the black. They do have a little yellow because there's a yellow gene we're not really discussing. But yeah, so you can see Maisie lacks the black pigment in her eyes and tongue. You can see that her eyes are red and her tongue is red.
Oh yeah.
And let's show the tongues of our snakes, Jacob. Let's see if we can get some tongues. Can you get the tongue? So if you ran into a corn snake in the woods, this is what the corn snake would look like. This is also, it's a normal corn or a wild type corn snake. Sadly, these corn snakes are often confused. A lot of people think they're copperheads. I don't think they look anything like copperheads, but unfortunately a lot of them are killed because people think they're copperheads, which is very sad. They're very beneficial snakes. They kill the rodents that destroy crops and spread disease. People don't know why corn snakes are called corn snakes. Some people think it's because their stomachs look like kernels of corn. And some people say that corn snakes are called corn snakes because they're often found where grain is stored. And they're often found around corn. So nobody really knows why they were named corn snakes. Corn snakes are the second most popular pet snake in the US. Ball pythons are the top kept snake in the US, which is unfortunate because corn snakes, I think, are the best pet snakes. They're very docile. They rarely bite. Which means they pretty much never bite unless you really, really do something that you shouldn't be doing. They are interesting. They move a lot, which is fun. They have beautiful colors. They're much easier to care for than ball pythons. You don't have to worry as much about the temperature and humidity. They're much more forgiving snakes. If something goes wrong with your temperature or humidity, your corn snake is not likely to die, whereas your ball python might. I lost a ball python one time because of inappropriate temperatures, and that's a hard way to learn a lesson. So the babies move a lot more. They're much more active than the adults. Corn snakes are a type of rat snake. Corn snakes are completely harmless to humans. If you ever get bit by a non-venomous snake, really all you need to do is wash the bite with soap and water, and it's probably a good idea to stay up to date on tetanus shots. But other than that, you don't really need to worry. So goodbye from Candy, Kellogg, and Maisie. Oop. You want to put them all down here?
Sure. Maisie's going sideways.
You going sideways, Maze? Goodbye from the corn snakes. You want to get Maisie's head closer? Ooh, that's a cute one. See if we can get all three of their heads in a shot. That's cute.
Maisie's
Pull Maze back a little.
Constrict the little one.
Look how tiny the little one is compared to Maisie.